Welcome. I want to welcome everyone to Secrets to Luminous Living, How to Grow Your Knowing with Mediumship and Meditation. Each Thursday, I'll be joining you with a new conversation and a guest that will really open up your heart. And tonight, I have the fabulous honor of introducing someone who I've known for many years, who is an inspiration to so many. And I forgot to say, my name is Melissa Boyd. I am a spiritual medium and a luminous business coach. My business is Grow Your Knowing, and I'm helping people around the world to awaken within. And my guest today, I know her personally. I've watched her journey. She's absolutely phenomenal. And her name is Dr. Katie Eastman. So I am so excited, Katie, to introduce you to our audience at the Mind, Body, Spirit Podcast Network. So welcome, Dr. Katie.
Oh, it is such a pleasure to be here. I adore you, Melissa. You know that. We've worked together for so long, and you've just lifted me up for years.
You know, I want to say that, you and I meet a lot of people. We do in our work, and we both do a lot of volunteerism. I honestly can say to you that you are one of the deepest, most compassionate souls I have ever had the privilege to know in this life. And I mean that with every cell in my body. So those of you who are unfamiliar with Dr. Katie's work, I'm going to read you her bio. And then I'm going to tell you a little bit about other things that she's done, because she's very humble in her bio. So Dr. Katie is an author. She's a speaker, a change agent. She's a coach and a leader. And really, I would say, Katie, you have carried the message of dying children and children who are grieving to a level that I don't really know anybody else on the planet that has done the work you've done. And I mean that with all the cell in my body. I'm going to pause right now and say, can you please just tell our listeners about the Jason program before I get into your latest book and your book coming out soon?
Yes, sure. The Jason program was an organization that was based on a promise. My greatest teachers have been dying children. And there was one in particular who was a teenager who is my guiding light. And I learned so much from him. And he happened to die at an early age. But before he died, he lived right up until he died. And I learned so much about life and living. And Jason was his name. And before he died on his deathbed, I promised him I would dedicate my entire life's work to him and to getting his wisdom out to the world. So I have. And I created the Jason program to provide quality support and care to children and their families when the child had a life-threatening condition. So it was a pediatric palliative care program that existed and did a lot of wonderful work for 10 years throughout this country, and then it actually touched other countries. And my book is really based on the inspiration of those children.
Wow. So, yes, and I'm just gonna, talk a little bit about, so Katie, Dr. Katie is an author, and I'm just gonna read this about your book. So, change and loss touch all of our lives. Sometimes they're small and sometimes they feel overwhelming. Navigating them can be hard, especially on your own. In today's world, it's more important than ever to not just get through change, but to use it as a chance to grow. Katie has worked as a licensed psychotherapist, a life coach, and organizational change consultant. With over 35 years, she has specialized in helping people and teams manage change, loss, and grief, while also helping them find their ways to grow. Whether it's a small life shift or a major challenge, she's here to guide you. In her book, so you must get her book, it's called Uplifting. inspiring stories of loss, change, and growth. And it also introduces her recreate model, which she's going to talk about. But I first want to say thank you for trusting me with your words. I was able to read and review your book. It was just so inspiring. And I guess I want to ask you, your book is, you say, inspirited by Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. Tell us about that.
I have been blessed. Oftentimes we will read a book by an author and we'll be inspired by it, we'll be moved by it, but not very often do we get to work with and be mentored by that author.
Mm.
I was so blessed through a series of circumstances in my life to have read Dr. Ross's book on death and dying when I was in college, meet her in person, and be mentored by her about how to help people live and manage grief in all circumstances of their life. And so I was able to evolve and develop my own models of care based on her work and inspired by her spirit.
Wow. Now, for those of people listening who are not familiar with the work of Dr. Kubler-Ross, would you just briefly summarize it and then we'll move into other aspects?
Most people are familiar with the 5 stages of grief, but they don't know who developed them.
Ah,
Elizabeth Kubler-Ross is the originator of the 5 stages of grief. And a special note about those stages, they're not linear. They're not expected to be
mm,
linear. They're a roadmap that offers you certain guidelines and guideposts, but it is not meant to be this is what you do. It's something to give you support.
yeah, I think that's really important. So in your book and in your work, Katie, you talk about, the lessons of loss. And I think
Mm.
people think, loss is just loss, but can you talk a little bit about that to our listeners?
Sure. There are different kinds of losses we face every single day. There are tangible losses that we think of. When we think of the word loss, we think of something concrete, like loss
Mm.
of a relationship, loss of a job, but I am expanding that and saying, no, losses can also be intangible. Loss of safety, loss of security, loss of certainty, loss of stability, loss of financial stability. Those are all losses we incur every single day. And yet we don't call them losses, and we absolutely do not refer to them as something we grieve. So I want people to expand
Wow.
their understanding, because if you understand loss in a bigger context, then you recognize that your own personal response to those losses includes grief.
Wow. Yeah, it's very important to grieve. And as a medium, of course, when I sit with people, I mean, I've sat with people who lost a child and they never talked about it because they were, they're, say they come to me now when they're 70 or 80 years old. And back then, when they had a miscarriage or a child died before 3 years old, they never grieved it. And then they grieve it. And then there's a change. And the person will call me and say, oh my gosh, I couldn't leave my house for 5 years because my child died and I wasn't able to grieve. So I think that, for people listening out there, you know, it's never too late to grieve. And I think that people forget that. They think, oh, that happened so long ago. I don't need to deal with it. I just need to move on. And you're really encouraging people to, go through those stages and drop into that and looking at the cycles of grief. So, what are the cycles of grief?
When you think about loss, all right, I created this recreate model about the phases of loss.
Mm,
So, recreate, it is an opportunity to take a loss and sit back. It starts with reflection. Sit back, reflect on what am I learning from this? And then it's exploring options, exploring different opportunities that this offers me to be a better me. So in general, this recreate model is all about giving you prompting questions that are in the book to ask yourself, what would make me better from this? How can I not only make myself better, but how can I bring my skills, gifts, and talents to make the world better? And that's my goal for people, is to expand their concept and ideas of loss to be an opportunity for self-reflection that allows them to give back.
I love that. And of course, I've seen the prompts in the book, and they're so powerful because I think that when people read things, they say, so, so what? How can I do that? And right now I feel that, you and I have talked about this a lot. In a strange way, most people are saying, oh my gosh, the world is falling apart, things are falling apart. But no, there's such inspiration, especially from the children. So I'm going to kind of move to another aspect of yourself, which is, not only have you done everything I said and more, but you've also reached out to children in Ukraine. So tell us about
Yes.
that project.
Yes, I was, the day that the Ukrainian war broke out, I was in prayer and I just said, use me. And immediately something came up on my computer that said there was a group of psychologists who were creating a mental health program and they needed volunteers to help provide support. So I jumped on it and I've been working with them ever since the war started. I am helping them create an app that can be utilized for anyone in a humanitarian crisis to have easy access to mental health support
Wow.
and in their own language.
Mm,
And so their program is called The Soul, and they are a group of female psychologists who, from bomb shelters,
oh my God.
created this amazing curriculum and program that offers one-on-one and group counseling and curriculum to help anyone through war. And it's really, and what's most powerful is when you think about children, if only children in war-torn countries were taught how to have skills to develop compassion instead of hate.
Wow. Oh my
That's what
gosh.
this curriculum does. And I worked with a little one who was 8 years old, and she, from the moment the war began, and she couldn't even get out of bed. She was so terrified. And now she's going to dance classes and she's living a semi-normal life, living in fear all the time anyway, but
Mm,
she's living. And the reason being is we found a way for her to identify hope
wow.
and hope instead of hate. And she lives with hope every day now because we work together from the very beginning instead of giving her opportunity to learn hate.
Oh my gosh. Oh my goodness. I get chills whenever you talk about this. You know, I want to say it's a little different, but it's similar. When I worked in Boston, I worked with a program with Mayor Menino, and I would go into Lower Dorchester at the time that was very, lots of gang violence and everything. And the question I asked these kids who were between 9 and 11 is, what is a friend? And that was in the curriculum that we had put together. And this 9-year-old boy looked at me and he said, someone who can get me a gun. And I said, oh my goodness. And so it is this, you know, we don't even know what kids are going through unless we have the conversation. And so you're really helping open up these conversations. So for anyone listening, especially around your Ukraine project, how can they get involved with that?
What you can do is you can reach out to me via Dr. Katie Eastman at drkatieeastman.com. You can also look up The Soul, the Ukrainian Circle, and that is on LinkedIn. They have their own website, and you can find out more about them, but you can absolutely do it through me as well.
Oh, that's incredible. So what is your vision for world peace? And I know you and I both believe that world peace is possible. It can happen in pockets, and eventually there will be world peace.
It starts with us. I mean, I have been truly blessed to be offered a book contract to do a peace guidebook with Elizabeth Hamilton Garino in Maine. And she and I are writing this together with HCI Publisher, and they are asking us to provide tools, practical advice, and inspiring stories to help
Mm.
people and guide people. It's called the Peace Guidebook for a reason. We want to guide people on how to begin spreading peace one person at a time. We want to create it as a movement. Our goal is
Mm.
1 million people. And how we do it is we start with ourselves. If you wake up
Absolutely.
every single day and before you put your feet on the ground, you say, I choose to be peaceful today, then that will make a difference. You will have your own inner peace. And then you will share peace with other people by virtue of how you respond to them instead of react. You'll think more peacefully, and that ripples. And if it ripples to your family, to your community, to your neighbors, and outward, eventually it can become global.
Oh, I love that. And I absolutely, wow. Well, Katie, we're going to just pause for a station break and then we will be right back. Okay, so welcome back. I was thinking about it. There's not a lot of people I can talk to that are inspired by dying children. And I think I shared with you one of my students was murdered by a serial killer. He was 12. I was 16 and a half when I was his teacher. And whenever I come up against a parent who has lost a child, and I try to do as many complimentary sessions that I can do for people who have had a child that has died at a young age, and to give peace to them, um, they really uplift me, and so I love that the title of your book is Uplifting. And I do want to say I love on your website that you have the butterfly as a symbol, and I think it has all these different meanings. I don't know if we ever talked about this, but the butterfly, and I love the one right in the back of you, the butterfly with the two sunflowers on either side. And the butterfly is actually an animal or an insect that lives from zero, not only a whole day, to 30 days. But yet it's the number one tattoo around the world, and it's the number one symbol that talks about transformation and peace. So it's just absolutely phenomenal. Now, I know you do a lot of like dynamic leadership coaching with people and businesses. Would you like to talk a little bit about that work that you do?
Sure. I'm in the process now I've created a project and a program model utilizing change, loss, and growth in organizations going through major transition. And think about it, when an organization goes through a change, and it doesn't have to be a change that you think about when you think about organizations. It can be it's not just a change when someone dies, which is what we think about with loss. It's when an organization goes through acquisition or
Yeah.
transitions like layoffs or transitions that create change, major change. And I want to help those organizations' employees look at themselves and recognize what they individually need to be able to go through the change and manage the change versus the change manage them, and
Wow.
give them practical tools and help them assess their own needs so that they can be a better employee. And there's all sorts of evidence and data that says that an employee who is well and takes care of themselves is a much more productive, much more likely to remain through change, which increases the bottom line and improves the overall productivity for the organization. So I am working with organizations doing just that.
I think that's, it's so important. And, giving people permission. I think that what's interesting is, I would say maybe over the past 3 or 4 years, have you noticed as well that more companies are talking about mindfulness and, giving people more, not just a fitness membership. They're saying, well, there's, this meditation group, and here are things you can do because we're in a major transformation on a global level on all different aspects. And so there is this incredible opportunity for every single person to step up and do service. And it can be really simple steps. If you're listening and you're saying, oh my gosh, this is so overwhelming. Well, if you make choices to wake up hopeful, it will change your vibrational frequency because we are
Exactly.
all energy, right? In motion. So it's just really,
Right.
really important that we can change the world. And we
Yes.
can also um, thank children for their hope and their energy. We talked about, I know you lived in Maine for a while, for a long time, I believe. And, you know, I think of Samantha Smith. People always ask me, who's your hero? Who's one of your heroes for peace? And I always say Samantha Smith. She was a 10-year-old girl who wrote a letter to Andropov, and she said, Dear Mr. President, congratulations on your new job. I have one question. Are you going to blow up the world? Please don't do this. I don't think God would like that. Sincerely, Samantha Smith from Maine. And he wrote back, and she actually helped to halt the Cold War. Her
Yes.
act of, so we have no excuses, right? We have no excuses. We have to, I always tell people, let's take compassionate action. We can take compassionate actions that help to, change and revolutionize the world. And I love that, you too, like, live in a luminous heart. And I do want to say the other piece about you being in the field that you do is I've never once saw you give from your reserve. You always give from your abundance. And that's really important. I always remind myself and my clients, give from your abundance and not from your reserve. So as you're speaking to us, and every interaction I've had with you over the past 18 years has been positive, uplifting. And I think it's because there's that joy, that internal joy, that river of joy that's there. And so I just want to thank you for being on this planet and just really radiating that joy to others, because we all can live in that vibration, and so where can people buy your book and find out about this?
My book is available on Amazon and Barnes and Noble and anywhere where books are sold. And I encourage you, if you get this book, please give it to someone else as well. Give a copy to someone else, because there are people out there who need it. And
Mm.
they need it because they're going through change and they could use support. And this is one way you can support them.
And your new book, how can people pre-order it? How can they learn about it?
Well, if they go to bestoveryou.com and they look for the Percolate Peace Project, then they can get engaged as one of our million people and keep track as we write the book and we release the book and we start doing advanced copies, advanced, yes, whatever purchases. This is a whole new world to me. Anyway, we would love to hear from you. And so go to that. Go to Best Over You,
Percolate Peace.
Percolate Peace.
Well,
Yes.
I have not signed up. After this interview, I'm going to go and sign up, and I'm going to encourage all of our listeners and all of my clients, and to encourage them to do that. You can follow Katie at Dr. Katie Eastman, 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 on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on Instagram, and on YouTube. So one last question for you, which is, you can answer one or the other, doesn't, or you can answer both. What is your secret to luminous living?
Silence.
Mm,
Silence. Yeah. Every morning, without fail, I get up before anyone else and I sit in silence and I look out at beauty, natural beauty, and I'm grateful and I raise my vibration with either a vibrational piece of music or something that lifts my heart and my soul. And I enter the day with a high experience of just sacred solitude.
mm, that's beautiful. I concur. Silence is incredible. I don't know if I ever mentioned to you, but I did my first Vipassana retreat, 12 days of silence. It
Wow.
was intense, and you had to be up at 4:30 and go to bed at 10, and you couldn't look at another person. It was pretty much of a mind-blowing experience.
I've heard about those. I've thought about that, but you know what?
Yeah.
I could
Oof. You
still.
got to get yourself all, really ready for it. It's a
Yeah.
process, and it's also, you come out of it realizing we're all one energy, which you and I know anyhow. And
Right.
I know that Elizabeth is so proud of you and working with you, and it's just such incredible stuff. So before we close, I just want to say thank you, thank you, thank you, Katie, Dr. Katie, for your work in this world. And do you remember years ago I said to you, you need to call yourself Dr. Katie? I think it was about 10 years ago or so. I kept saying, no,
Yes.
no more Katie
Yes.
Eastman. You worked hard to be Dr. Katie. So I'm so excited to say Dr. Katie Eastman, because that's who you are. It's just so incredible. Oh, and I did want to mention, tell us about the cover. Who's on your cover of your book?
Oh, my girl. This is my daughter, Hallie. And during COVID, it's a wonderful story. She and her dance friends, she was a dancer, is a dancer. And during COVID, of course, they couldn't dance together at the studio. But what they did is they got together and they went out to an island. That we live on an island, and they went out to a hill at sunset and they danced.
Oh,
And that photo was taken by one of her closest friends. And I just really believe that it epitomizes when we feel uplifted. What do we want to do? We want to raise our arms and we want to just lift ourselves up to the highest possible
oh,
capacity and just praise. And that's what she's doing. She's really showing us what an uplifting moment is. Even in the midst of the hardships of being a class of 2020 student, not being able to
wow.
sing or
Yeah,
dance or do any of the things she lost, she lifted herself up.
that is just gorgeous. I love that so much. Um, so thank you, Katie, for being on the show, and thank you for being in the world and your light. So thank you everyone for listening. My name is Melissa Boyd. I'm at growyourknowing.com. You can also find me on Inside Timer. I have meditations there. And there are a few spaces in my retreat that I'm doing. I'm leading a retreat with Kailash Niels, who is an incredible yoga therapist who has trained yoga therapists around the world, from India to the United States to Brazil. And our retreat is on March 15th to the 17th, called Awakening Conscious Abundance. So I hope, if you're interested, you can take a look at my website. And now, each time we end the show, we're going to end it with a jingle, mini song that was written by a friend of mine, Anna Krantz. So we're going to end with Shine On. So we'll just breathe that in, you and I, Katie, and all of our listeners. Until next week, please shine on and be luminous with your soul. So go ahead and just listen to this, and then we'll see you next week.
Illuminate your soul, shine on our soul. Illuminate yourself, shine on everyone else. I know that you know that you can't control what you can't control, so you might as well let it all go. Come on, break free. Let yourself breathe, 'cause the best in you brings out the best in me. Illuminate your soul, shine on a soul. Illuminate yourself, shine on everyone else. Shine on everyone else. Shine on everyone else.
Until next week, shine on everyone and shine on everyone else.